Freedom of press is a very important thing, and it's also very important to not have a system or have the authority of the oligarchy determine which journalists are free and which ones aren't. And even press that is critical of you deserves to be just as free as the ones who are full on propagandists for you. So I went to college for journalism. I gave up on that path, partially due to life getting in the way, but I think it allowed me to challenge what I learned far more than if I had just stood on the path and working a formal job in the industry, like in sports or whatnot. So I'm glad that this past year has really opened me up to even higher level than what college could have done, of challenging mainstream media and the politicians that they protect far too much. A major witness in the United States Department of Justice case against Julian Assange has admitted to fabricating key accusations in the indictment against the WikiLeaks founder. The witness, who has a documented history with sociopathy and has received several convictions for sexual abuse of minors and wide-ranging financial fraud, made the admission in a newly published interview in London, where he has also confessed to having his crime spree whilst working with the Department of Justice and FBI, receiving a promise of immunity from prosecution. The man in question, Sigurdur Ingi Thordarson, was recruited by U.S. authorities to build a case against Assange after misleading them to believe he was previously a close associate of his. In fact, he had volunteered on a limited basis to raise money for WikiLeaks in 2010, but was found to have used that opportunity to embezzle more than $50,000 from the organization. Julian Assange was visiting Thordarson's home of Iceland around this time due to his work with Icelandic media and members of parliament in preparing the Icelandic Modern Media Initiative, a press freedom project that produced a parliamentarian resolution supporting whistleblowers and investigative journalism. I also want to be on the record as saying that if there was one thing that I was propagandized into trusting, it was WikiLeaks. Because I remember when a lot of these reports came out in 2016, I will admit that I was propagandized against the idea of believing the legitimacy of WikiLeaks. But the truth is, they haven't been wrong on anything that they published. The United States is currently seeking Assange's extradition from the United Kingdom in order to try him for espionage related to the release of leaked classified documents. If convicted, he could face up to 175 years in prison. The indictment has sparked fears for press freedoms in the United States beyond and prompted strong statements in support of Assange from Amnesty International, Reporters Without Borders, the editorial staff of the Washington Post, and many others. U.S. officials presented an updated version of an indictment against him to a magistrate court in London last summer. The veracity of the information contained therein is now directly contradicted by the main witness whose testimony is based on. Hold on one moment. See how slanted this system is? When you challenge the military industrial complex and whistleblow on them, they're going to give you seven plus times more the punishment than what the rare moment that a cop actually got charged for killing a man in this country. But no, if you're a whistleblower, they want to charge you up to 3 lifetimes worth of punishment for revealing the war crimes that the United States has committed. Tell me how insane that is. And yes, it would be an extremely dangerous precedent to set, because any adversarial journalism is in danger of being challenged as well. No instruction from Assange. The court documents refer to Mr. Thordarson simply as teenager, a reference to his youthful appearance rather than true age. He was 28 years old, and Iceland as NATO country 1, but make no real effort to hide the identity of either. They purport to show that Assange instructed Thordarson to commit computer intrusions or hacking in Iceland. The aim of this addition to the indictment was apparently to shore up and support conspiracy charge against Assange in his relation to his interaction with Chelsea Manning. And by the way, I've seen a lot of people going in on Chelsea Manning because she recently did a podcast with The Intercept and trashed Assange in that episode. And it's such garbage. She did that to a fellow whistleblower. And gotta get that out there. In fact, Thordarson now admits to Snowden that Assange never asked him to hack or access phone recordings of MPs. His new claim is that now he had in fact received some new files from a third party who claimed to have recorded MPs and had offered to share them with Assange without having any idea what they actually contained. He claims he never checked any of the contents of the files, or even if they contained audio recordings, as his third-party source suggested. He further admits the claim that Assange had instructed or asked him to access computers in order to find any such recordings is false. Nonetheless, the tactics employed by U.S. officials appear to have been successful can be gleaned from the ruling of Magistrate Court Judge Vanessa Barrister on January 4th of this year. Although she ruled against extradition, she did so purely on humanitarian grounds relating to Assange's health concerns. Suicide risk and the conditions he would face in confinement of U.S. prisons. With regards to the actual accusations made in the indictment, Barrister sided with the arguments of the American legal team, citing specific examples from Iceland, which are now seriously called into question. Other misleading elements can be found in the indictment and later reflected in the magistrate's judgment based on Thordarson's now admitted lies. One is a reference to Icelandic bank documents. The magistrate court judgment reads, "It is alleged that Mr. Assange and teenager failed a joint attempt to decrypt a file stolen from a NATO country one bank." Thordarson admits to Stundin that this actually refers to a well-publicized event in which an encrypted file was leaked from an Icelandic bank assumed to contain information about defaulted loans provided by the Icelandic Landsbanki. The bank went under the fall of 2008, along with almost all other financial institutions in Iceland, plunged the country into a severe economic crisis. The file was at this time in the summer of 2010 shared by many online who attempted to decrypt it for the public interest purpose of revealing what precipitated the financial crisis. Nothing supports the claim that this file was even stolen per se, as it was assumed to have been distributed by whistleblowers from inside the failed bank. So this is a pretty interesting revealing that you're seeing here. Revealing chat logs. Thordarson spoke with the journalist from Stundin for several hours and he prepared a thorough investigative report into his activities that include never before published chat logs and new documents. The chat logs were gathered by Thordarson himself and gave a comprehensive picture of his communications whilst he was volunteering for WikiLeaks 2010 and 11. It details his with WikiLeaks staff as well as unauthorized communications with members of international hacking groups that he got into contact with via his role as a moderator on an open IRC WikiLeaks forum, which is a form of online chat. There is no indication WikiLeaks staff had any knowledge of Thordarson's contacts with aforementioned hacking groups. Indeed, the logs show his clear deception. The communications show a pattern where Thordarson clearly infiltrating his position within WikiLeaks. Describing himself as a chief of staff, head of communications, number 2 in the organization were responsible for. In these communications, Thordarson frequently asked the hackers to either access material from Icelandic entities or attack Icelandic websites with so-called DDoS attacks. These are designed to disable sites and make them inaccessible, but not cause permanent damage to content. Stundin cannot find any evidence that Thordarson was ever instructed to make those requests by anyone inside WikiLeaks. Thordarson himself is not even claiming, although he explains that this is something Assange was aware of or that he had interpreted it, that so this was expected of him. How this supposed nonverbal communication took place, he cannot explain. Furthermore, he never explained why WikiLeaks would be interested in attacking any interest in Iceland, especially at such a sensitive time while they were in the midst of publishing huge trove of U.S. diplomatic cables as part of an international media partnership. Assange is not known to have any grievances with Icelandic authorities, as was in fact working with members of the parliament in updating Iceland's freedom of press laws for the 21st century. Alright, just wanted to get an idea of how much longer that article is, but I'm going to go to the restroom real quick before I dive into the rest of it, because I think it's important to not leave any details unread in this. Alright, y'all, I'm back, and we're about to get into this second hour here, as this is the Rochford Files with your host Andrew Rochford, live on Twitch. On the FBI radar, Thordarson rogue acts were not limited to communications of that nature, as he also admits to Stundon that he set up avenues of communication with journalists and had media pay for lavish trips abroad where he misrepresented himself as an official representative of WikiLeaks. He also admits that he stole documents from WikiLeaks staff by copying their hard drives. Among those documents were from Renata Avila, a lawyer who worked for the organization of Mr. Assange. Thordarson continued to step up his illicit activities in the summer of 2011, where he established communication with Sabu, the online moniker of Hector Xavier Monsegor, a hacker and a member of the rather infamous LOSEC hacker group. In that effort, all indications are that Thordarson was acting alone without any authorization, let alone urging from anyone inside WikiLeaks. And here's the photo of that hacker. What Thordarson did not know at the time was that the FBI had arrested Sabu in the beginning of June 2011 and threatened him into becoming an informant and collaborator of the FBI. Thus, when Thordarson continued his previous pattern of requesting attacks on Icelandic interest, the FBI knew and saw an opportunity to implicate Julian Assange. Later that month, a DDoS attack was performed against the websites of several government institutions. That deed was done under the watchful eyes of the FBI, who must have authorized the attack or even initiated it. As Sabu was at that point their man, what followed was an episode where it seems obvious that Icelandic authorities were fooled into cooperation under false pretenses. Ogmundur Jónasson was Minister of Interior at the time. As such, the political head of police and prosecution says of the United States activities, they were trying to use things here in Iceland and use people in our country to spin a web, a cobweb that would catch Julian Assange. Jónasson recalls that when the FBI first contacted Icelandic authorities on June 20th, 2011, it was to warn Iceland of an imminent and grave threat of intrusion against government computers. A few days later, FBI agents flew to Iceland and offered to formally assist in thwarting this grave danger. The offer was accepted, and on July 4th, a formal rogatory letter was sent to Iceland to seal the mutual assistance. Jónasson speculates that already then the U.S. was laying the groundwork for its ultimate purpose, not to assist Iceland but entrap Julian Assange. What I've been pondering ever since is if the spinning of the web had already started then, with the acceptance of the letter rogatory establishing cooperation they could use that as a pretext for later visits, said Jonason. Icelandic policemen were sent to the United States to gather further evidence of the so-called imminent danger, and Jonason says he does not recall anything of substance coming out of that visit. No further attacks were made against Icelandic interest, but the FBI would return. I think we're finally getting to the real juicy part here. Toward the end of August, Thordarson was being pursued by WikiLeaks staff who wished to locate the proceeds of online sales of WikiLeaks merchandise. It emerged Thordarson had instructed the funds be sent to his private bank by forging an email in the name of Julian Assange. Thordarson saw a way out, and on August 23rd, he sent an email to the U.S. Embassy in Iceland offering information in relation to a criminal investigation. He replied to with a call and confirmed he was offering to be an informant in the case against Julian Assange. The prosecutors and FBI were quick in responding. Within 48 hours, a private jet landed in Reykjavik with around 8 agents who quickly set up meetings with Thordarson and people from the Icelandic State Prosecutor's Office and the State Police Commissioner. And here's a photo of that Iceland minister, the former one, Jonason. Midday, Mr. Jonason, the then minister, got wind of this new visit, requested confirmation that thus related to the same case as earlier in the summer. I asked on what rogatory letter this visit was based, and it was the exact same case, Jonason says in an interview with Stundin. I then found out this was of a totally different nature and previously discussed. He says he put the two and two together, and it was obvious that it was the intention to lay a trap in Iceland for Assange and other staff members of WikiLeaks. So look at that. The United States, seemingly in collusion to try anything to take down Julian Assange. If that's what it sounds like to me. I'm not sure if you feel the same, but I think this is clear with the findings in this article and the fact that when you challenge the U.S. war machine and leak out the war crimes they're carrying out, it makes too much sense while they were looking for anything to try to take down Assange. And they also do a great job of propaganda to turn you against Assange, like Assange's work apparently being beneficial to Donald Trump was one of the big reasons that how they get so many liberals turned against Julian Assange. Then there's also the idea of progressives just flat out not caring enough about this case because they're just only concerned about things domestically. And when I've said this before, if you only care about things domestically, then you're not calling out the United States on its imperialism, then you're going to accomplish neither. Such actions were, according to Jonason, went way outside the scope of the agreement, and thus the overall cooperation with the agents to be stopped, and that they would be informed they were acting in Iceland without any authority. Only days later he learned that the agents and prosecutors had not yet left the country, so the Ministry of Foreign Affairs contacted the U.S. Embassy with the demand they help police recognize them and leave the country. They did, but left with new informant and star witness Sigurdur Ingi Thordarson, who flew with them to Denmark. Not a hacker, but a sociopath. Thordarson has been nicknamed Siggy the Hacker in Iceland. That is actually an acronym, as several sources Stundin has talked to claim that Thordarson's computer ability is menial. This is supported by several other chat logs and documents where he is requesting assistance from others doing rather uncomplicated computer jobs. Once he even saw FBI help uploading a video from his own phone. The meeting in Denmark was the first where the FBI enthusiastically embraced the cooperation with Thordarson. He says they wanted to know everything about WikiLeaks, including physical security of staff. They took the material he gathered, including the data he had stolen from WikiLeaks employees, and even planned to send him to England with a wire. Thordarson claimed in interviews he had refused that particular request. It was probably because he was not welcome anymore, as he knew WikiLeaks people had found out, or were about to firmly establish, that he embezzled funds from the organization. After months of collaboration with the FBI, seemed to have lost interest. At about the same time, charges were piling up against Thordarson, with the Icelandic authorities for massive fraud, forgeries, and theft on one hand, and sexual violations against underage boys he had tricked or forced into sexual acts on the other. See the lengths that the United States will go to make sure that they'll take down a whistleblower like Julian Assange and make sure that to put fear in any future person who would try to whistleblow on the war crimes of the United States, they'll get in cahoots with a person who has done fraud, forgeries, and theft, and sexual violations. That's how fucking corrupt the military-industrial complex is here in the United States. After long investigations, Thordarson was sentenced in 2013 and 14 and received relatively lenient sentences as the judge took into account that he changed his plea at court and pleaded guilty to all counts. According to a psychiatric assessment presented to the court, Thordarson was diagnosed as a sociopath, capable of remorse but still criminally culpable for his actions. He was assessed to be able to understand the basic difference between right and wrong. He just did not seem to care. Incarceration did not seem to have an intended effect of stopping Thordarson from continuing his life of crime. It actually took off and expanded in extent and in scope in 2019 when the Trump-era DOJ decided to revisit him, giving him a formal status as witness in the prosecution against Julian Assange and granting him any immunity in return from prosecution. Let's go back to that quote. He understands the basic difference of right and wrong, and he just did not seem to care. That is very telling the people at the military-industrial complex, the FBI, are willing to associate themselves with, because that says what the United States is about to be those people. They know the difference between right and wrong. They don't care. They're going to just push the agenda out that is in their best interest. And they're going to make sure that people who challenge that are going to have a hard time putting that message out to the American public. The New York Times problem. A couple more sections to go, y'all. In the month of following Assange's arrest in the Ecuadorian embassy in London in April 11, 2019, a new rotatory letter arrived in the Ministry of Justice in Iceland. This time the request was to take a formal statement from Thordarson in Iceland in the presence of his lawyer. The ministry had a new political head at the time who had limited knowledge of the prior history of the case. Although the Department of Justice had spent extreme resources attempting to build a case against Julian Assange during the Obama presidency, they had decided indicting Assange. The main concern was that he called the New York Times problem. Namely, there was such a difficulty distinguishing WikiLeaks publications and New York Times publications of the same material that going after one party would pose grave First Amendment concerns. And that right there is why this case is so important, because this is really contradictory of your First Amendment rights and the right to freedom of press. President Trump had appointed Attorney General William Barr did not share these concerns, neither did Trump-appointed Deputy Kellen S. Dwyer. Barr faced severe criticism for politicizing the DOJ on behalf of the president, got the ball rolling on the Assange case once again. The argument was if they could prove he was a criminal rather than a journalist, the charges would stick. That's where Thordarson's testimony was key. And the unfortunate part is they really shouldn't stick. We know that Julian Assange leaked these in the name of journalism. And whistleblowing is an essential part of journalism. In May 2019, Thordarson was offered an immunity deal signed by Dwyer that granted him immunity from prosecution based on any information wrongdoing they had on him. The deal, seen in writing by Stundon, also guarantees DOJ would not share any such information with other prosecutorial or law enforcement agencies. That would include Icelandic ones, meaning Americans would not share information on crimes he might have committed, threatening Icelandic security interest. And Americans had plenty of those over the years to be able to share them with Icelandic counterparts. In any event, Assange has never been suspected of any wrongdoing in Iceland. Stundon has seen confirmation from the district prosecutor in Iceland, Reykjavik Metropolitan Police. Assange has no entry in the Loki database of any police activity linked to an individual collected by Icelandic State Police Commissioner from 2009 to 2021. Assange's lawyer also inquired in the Icelandic Foreign Ministry if the points in his updated indictment where Iceland is referred to NATO Country 1 meant that his case had any relevance to Icelandic membership to NATO. The bilateral defense agreement between U.S. and Iceland or any other security interest. All such connections were dismissed in a reply from the defense attaché at the ministry. Impunity and a new crime spree. According to information obtained by Stundon, the immunity deal between DOJ and Thordarson was presented at headquarters of the Reykjavik police, where the only role of Icelandic policemen was to confirm the identity of Thordarson before leaving him alone with his lawyer in the back of a room where he met the U.S. delegation. It is as if the offer of immunity, later secured and sealed in a meeting in D.C., had encouraged Torgerson to take bolder steps in crime. He started to fleece individuals and companies on a grander scale than ever, usually by either acquiring or forming legal entities. He used to borrow merchandise, rent luxury cars, even order large quantities of goods from wholesalers without any intention to pay for these goods and services. Thordarson had forged the name of his own lawyer on notices to the company house registry, falsely claiming to have raised the equity of two companies to over 800,000 US dollars. The aim was to use these entities with solid financial positions on paper in a real estate venture. The lawyer has reported the forgery to the police, where other similar cases, along with multiple other reports of theft and trickery, are now piling up. When confronted with the evidence of the claims by a stunned journalist, he simply admitted to everything and explained it away as normal business practice. He has not yet been charged and is still practicing this business. Local newspaper DV reported that last week Thordarson had attempted to order merchandise on credit using a new company name, Icelandic Vermin Control. Despite using a fake name and coded face masks, he was unidentified and the transaction was stopped. He was last seen speeding away in a white Tesla, according to DV. Wow. It just shows you the lengths that the United States will go to protect itself and take down people in its own interest. And the sad part is, no mainstream media is going to pick up on the story when, if they were a real media, if they were a good press, this would be a big story to talk about in the news right now. But the reality is, you're probably not going to see any big type of media cover this